Hey everybody, let's take a break with Stephen. I'm Alex, and I have Stephen Shamus.
Hello,
and
everyone.
We would like to talk to everybody about what's going on in the Ace universe. What's happening? What's hot? What's trending?
That's cool. So we're going to try to cover all things pop culture, everything that's relevant in the world of comic books. Maybe we'll touch on some sports cards and some of the collectible merchandise that is out there. I know, Alex, we're gonna try to focus on 5 different elements on each show. Each show should be anywhere between 15 and 20 minutes. Hopefully you can get your pop culture fix for the week, and we're going to try to discuss relevant events. So, Alex, why don't you kick us off with the first topic?
Yeah, so obviously everything's being pushed back, release dates wise, movies and all that fun stuff. So we have, first up is Wonder Woman. One of the things that I think people are really excited about seeing is Cheetah, Maxwell Lord, Kristen Wiig, and Pedro Pascal playing those guys. What I see, and I think you see it too, is when the announcement of Cheetah came out, books started just going crazy.
Yeah, interestingly enough, I was in my local supermarket a couple times last week. The Doritos package with Gal Gadot dressed as Wonder Woman had already been out. They must have printed the bags
months in advance. Yeah,
months in advance. And I'm going to tell you something. I waited on like a Monday. Now they have tons of Doritos on the shelves. I went on Monday, and they had a whole shelf stacked with Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman. By Wednesday, I had to go back and buy more food. All the other Dorito bags were there, but people had bought up all the Wonder Woman bags. I wonder if that's going to be something that we're going to start to see. Funny enough, right? If all of a sudden people are going to be selling, hey, I got the rare Dorito Wonder Woman bag that I pulled from the shelf.
Yeah, I mean, you can't resell them. It's not like they pull them and they're going to put them back out when the movie comes out. Like, that's got a sale by date. It's dead. Those are dead products.
Yeah, I do wonder if it becomes one of the. I do wonder, Alex, if that becomes one of those long-term effects. So when it comes to Cheetah, the modern Cheetah's first new appearance is Wonder Woman 7,
yep.
George Perez. It doesn't have a very high population. So it's not a low pop book per se, but there's only 214 9.8s, and there's only 17 9.8 signature series. The signature series are probably George Perez ones. And as you know, Perez is tough, right?
He's done. He's retiring.
Yeah, he's retiring. He's not doing a lot of stuff anymore. And with the current state of conventions, we don't know if and when you're going to see George at another convention. So I would think that those 17 9.8s are going to be very, very difficult to find. And if you've noticed the price of the 214s, they've probably tripled in price.
Mm-hmm.
It used to be a very common basic book. It's pretty much tripled in price probably in the last, since they announced it. Interestingly enough, when you take a book from 1987, a lot of those books were in dollar boxes. A lot of those books got kicked around. A lot of those books got knocked around.
They were, especially the first 10 issues of a series like that. When I was at Midtown, if there was an 80s collection, the first 10 issues of that Wonder Woman series were in there constantly. They weren't hard to find, but I mean, 9/8s, that's tough. Those are, newsprint 80s comics. Like they're not easy to keep in 9/8 conditions.
Yeah, I would not expect to see a lot of new 9/8s with white pages enter the market by the time the movie comes out. So I think if you're looking for something interesting, I will say this. Issue number 9, The Origin of Cheetah, great cover image.
Mm-hmm.
There's only a 66 pop on that 9/8, and there's only 8 signature series, again, most likely George Perez, on those books. So I would look at that book also as a key book, being an origin, and being that Cheetah is pretty cool image on the cover.
Yeah. Is Maxwell Lord, like a character that you would never really assume would be in a Wonder Woman movie, being brought into the DCU, which is funny because the Maxwell Lord and Wonder Woman is obviously the villain. That's what they're setting it up to be. And Maxwell Lord, for years after Justice League #1, his first appearance, he was a good guy the whole time. When he turned was Infinite Crisis, which was a $1 book. You can find those $1 to $3 raw and barely any CGC 9/8. So it's funny to see how the Cheetahs are going and the Maxwell Lords are kind of stagnant, where probably after the movie you're going to see those go higher. Just League number ones are $10 books, $50 to $100 9/8.
Yeah, interestingly enough, on the Maxwell Lord, first of all, obviously Pedro Pascal's on fire.
Yeah.
His role in The Mandalorian season 2, as great and as anticipated as people thought The Mandalorian was, it was even better. I think. I think it really it was an extraordinarily great series. Interestingly enough, on the Justice League number ones, there is a 270 pop on the 9/8. However, on the Canadian price variants, and I think you're starting to see this more, whether it's UPC variants, Canadian price variants. Right now, CGC doesn't always break out the newsstand versus the direct market.
Right.
Mile High Comics years ago did start differentiating between the two, noting that, hey, these newsstand books, especially in high grade, are much, much more difficult to get. Yeah. On the Justice League number ones, where we know that there's a 270 pop, and it's a very, very common book. You and I picture that cover in our head. There's like a million copies out there. Yeah. Everybody knows it. On the Canadian price variants, there's only 23 9/8 with 0 signature series. So if you're going to look for a Maxwell Lord book, that might be the book, is the Canadian price variant.
Yeah. And those variants are only going to be harder to find. They'll always go up. Always go up.
Right. You can't look 23. Forget it. I mean, how many people are going to find a book from 1987, a 33-year-old book, and all of a sudden find it in 9/8? Like, you might be able to find one in a dollar box somewhere, but
Canada.
In Canada, by the way, remember 30 years ago, people were not looking at the newsstand variants and the direct market variants and the Canadian and the British price. People were not looking for those things. Now, all of a sudden, now that people are going back and they're looking at these variant and variations, they're starting to say, hey, wait a second. Some of these, there are real variants there, and they are more elusive.
Yeah.
Great. So what do we have next, Alex?
Let's go Amazing Spider-Man 361. The always pleasurable first appearance of Carnage.
What's amazing to me about that book is I could almost picture the cases and cases and cases and cases of books that we opened, that we had in our hand, $3 on the shelf. Alex, how did that book become such a holy grail with the volume that were printed? Why is that?
That's a classic 90s book. Classic, heavily printed 90s book. People still want them. I mean, every collection that someone, if it was a collection and people were collecting comics in the 90s, they had the Venoms, the Carnage, the Maximum Carnage series. They had Death of Supermans. They had anything with a lenticular cover. Like, those books are all over the place. But yet 9/8, still first appearance of Carnage. People love them.
You're going to love this. So there are over 15,000 graded CGC copies, almost 3,600 of them, plus 500 signature series, which is almost 4,100 of the 15,000 are 9.8s. That's a very large number of 9/8. It's a very high percentage of the copies, which means that it's not like 4,000 of 400,000, right? Where it's a very high percentage of the books that are being submitted are 9/8. So normally that would not mean a very high value for those kinds of books. So it is interesting when you see a book with a high print run, high 9/8, not a low pop book in high 9/8, but yet still carries a sort of mystique and aura about it, almost like New Mutants 97 and 87 and 98. I will say this. Interestingly enough, the second printing, and I think you're going to start to see this with a lot of books, Death of Superman 75, Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur, right? The second print, Ultimate Fallout 4. The first print, Miles' head is behind the logo. The second print, his head's in front of the logo. The second print is actually a nicer looking cover.
Yeah.
And the second prints are very valuable.
Way low print run.
Way low print runs.
Yeah.
So I think there's going to be a shift. So when you look at the second print of the Carnage book, there's only 299/8 with only 40 signature series. There's only 903 that are graded in total. That is 900 versus 15,000. So I think if you're going to look for something on the Spidey 361, I think you should try to find yourself a second print 9/8. It won't cost you the same amount of money, but there's only 290 of those in existence.
Yeah. And was that a silver, the second print?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, like the New Mutants 87 was gold. They're neat. I get it. It's a second printing. It's not as flashy as first printing, first appearance. But again, it's what's rare. Second printing is more rare.
Okay, what else we got on tap, Alex?
Sweet Tooth, my favorite Jeff Lemire.
So talk about this series. Why this series? Why is it being picked up by Netflix? What is the story about? Can you describe the story, summarize it for us, and what is the attraction for Netflix?
Yeah, I mean, if anybody knows anything about Jeff Lemire, he is a workhorse. He pretty much writes and draws almost all of his books. They're all out on time. He has multiple books coming out. I think Sweet Tooth might have been his first larger audience book. It was a DC Vertigo book. He had some stuff come out before that, original graphic novels and so on. But I think this was the one that got people intrigued, where a boy who has antlers runs into a guy who is essentially hunting him. And it's been years since I finished the series. And then it says that their journey together, as you know, there's another group of humans that are hunting these children that are also, mixed with animals, but they're born from humans. Very odd, but very, very solid book. It's very clean. There's a beginning, there's an end, it's over. It's great. I think it was about 40, 50 issues, maybe a little bit more than that. And the first issue was a DC dollar book. I remember when it came out in Midtown, it was like, there were dollars, so it cost 60 cents to buy. So there's 1,000 ordered, 1 million of them.
Interestingly enough, the 9/8s have almost doubled in price just since the announcements. They were selling between 175 and 200. They're 450 plus now, and you can't even find them. I would assume the print runs are not large on that first issue. It's definitely something to keep an eye on moving forward. And, and then obviously the Jeff Lemire signature series, if you can catch him at a show. But the problem right now is you can't catch anybody at shows right now.
Yep. Plus he's, again, like I said, he's extremely busy. He draws and he writes all of his books and multiple books. Like he's doing a bunch of stuff for Dark Horse. He's doing more stuff for DC. I think he's going back to Marvel, doing some writing. So it's not like he's going to every con once a month. You might see him at 1 or 2 or 3 the whole year. Maybe some of the big ones, Baltimore, New York. But now that Robert Downey Jr. picked up the option to make the show, he's just going to get more famous. He's going to get more stuff's going to get picked up. So yeah, signature series are going to be really hard to come by.
So Alex, they've only graded 76 copies in total, only 25 blue label 9/8s, only 18 yellow label 9/8s. So there's a reason why those books have doubled in the last week or two, because anybody who wants it, I mean, the pop is so small. Good luck. I mean, the people who have them probably have them in personal collections and trying to pry one out now, right? How are you going to pry one out right now?
Yeah.
Who's giving up their book?
Maybe send it to CGC, hopefully.
Right. Who's going to pull that book out of their collection right now when the series is just announced, about to launch? No one's pulling that book out. So,
and they were dollar books, so like people didn't care. They're probably given away for free at some shops. Like nobody was expecting this to be a hot book by any means, especially 10 years later almost.
Yeah, it's look, I think you're starting to see that with a lot of these books where, it takes years and years and years for stuff to get picked up, and then it gets picked up, and then by the time it gets picked up, it's 5, 10, 15, 20 years old, and it's been kicking around boxes, it's been kicking around, it's got shuffled around, it got moved, and 9/8s, they have to be from the factory to the shelf, and even then you get 9/6s or 9/4s.
Pulling them out of boxes. Ball and chain.
Ball and chain.
Yeah.
So interestingly enough, I'm friends with Ale, who's the artist on the series. We actually know Scott Lobdell. He's been to many of our events over the years. Great guy, great story. I spoke to Ale. I'm like, Ale, what is the print? First of all, the first issue is a black cover. Okay. Up until a week ago, very few people had even heard of the series from Homage. I don't even think Homage as a studio is around anymore. The book is 21 years old. It's from 1999. And I asked Ali what the print run was. He goes, I think maybe we printed 7,000 copies of the first one. He said he believes that they printed maybe 1,000 copies of number 4. There are sets that just went skyrocketing. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, Emily Blunt. The sets just went skyrocketing. There are no blue labels. There are no yellow labels. There's no labels. They don't exist. Issue 1 is going to be very, very tough with the black cover. I asked Al, I said, "Oh, you got a little stash hiding?" He goes, "No, he has just maybe a few copies laying around. So old." So I think it's going to be one of those things where I think the copies are going to go to the moon because there's nothing out there. You can't get them. Right now, I think sets are selling in the $60 to $75 range, 1 through 4. But issue 4 is the issue that is literally impossible to find. Those things have been probably kicking around in boxes for 20 years. You can't find them.
50-cent bins. 50-cent bins. Not even dollar bins.
Who has them?
Yeah.
Who has them? So it's like jackpot. I even asked Ali if he has any of the original art. He goes, "Oh, long gone." So imagine you bought that art from Ali.
I think I saw someone on eBay that had some interiors and he wanted like $5,000 for something.
Yeah, you can't get it. Good luck.
Yeah.
Good luck. You can't find it. It's so limited. There's only 4 issues. And that's a perfect example of a 21-year-old story out of nowhere. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, forget about it.
Yeah.
You already know what's going to happen with Dwayne "The
Rock.
And
I think the person that's writing this, I mean, it's all got the movie, if it goes through, has nothing but hits. Dwayne, Emily Blunt, right? And then I think the script writer is the person who wrote The Big Sick.
Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson doesn't do small films. Do we have any more topics for tonight, Alex, or we're good for tonight?
One more.
On Black Widow, very, very interesting. It seems like it's based on the 1999 series because that's when Yelena
stuff.
Yeah, that's when Yelena Belova was introduced.
Mm-hmm.
There are 3 covers for that book. All are very, very difficult to find. Very difficult to find in high grade because the first Black Widow is really based on the original Black Widow character, and that's the books that people have been chasing for the last 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden you're introducing Yelena Belova, who's played by Florence Pugh, who is probably going to be, obviously, spoiler alert. We all know what happens to ScarJo in the Avengers films.
Yeah, in-game.
It looks like Yelena is going to take the ball and roll to the future of the new Avengers films, and this is where she first appears.
Yeah.
So very, very difficult book. 1999, again, a 21-year-old book. People only really started talking about it a few months, after they announced Yelena was going to be, side by side with Black Widow. The main cover, 111 9/8, 0 signature series.
Yeah.
The DF version, the DF cover, 47 9/8 with only 1 signature series.
Yeah.
And then the variant cover.
Try to find that raw to begin with.
Oh, yeah, forget it. And sometimes got to find the certificate, right? A lot of people lose the little certificates. Yeah. Right, I think there was only a few thousand copies printed. And then the third version is the variant cover, only 74 9/8 blue labels and only 1 signature series. So I'm surprised, like those books are in the 150 plus range now. I don't know how they're not way more than that. I think once the film hits, once it comes out, once you see Yelena, Florence Pugh, incredible actress, she's going to be great. We all know what ScarJo is going to bring to the table. So I think that's going to be another book to watch because, again, very low pop.
Yep.
The DF version, they only printed a few thousand copies. These are all black covers. They chip very, very easily on the spine. Any chip at all shows up very, very easily. And again, that was not the book that people were setting aside for the last 20 years when it came to Black Widow.
Right.
So I think that's the book that people are going to be looking at once the film is finally released.
Yeah, you can find, I think Raws are like between $10 and $20. And then, but the DF 9/8s are like $300.
Yeah, can't get it. Well, thank you everybody for listening to our initial podcast. It's been a lot of pleasure. Thank you to my co-host, Alex Ray. It's been a pleasure. Alex, any other final words?
That's it. Subscribe, and we'll talk about it a couple more times, I think.
Right. Happy collecting, everybody. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, guys.